Continue the previous story by showing Long Outyin watching from a distance the black serpent who was turning off the protective formation in the previous part, before leaving to look for disciples together with grandfather Murong. Long said the formation was called Guardian Dragon of the Mountains, whose level was equivalent to Mahayana, and it seems that Long here also knows that the Mountain Sect and Illusionaire Moon Sect have been merged into one sect named Pinyin Sect, so that from here he suddenly concluded something, that Senior Chen's test was not only for him, but for 3 different parties. Then Long Outyin assumed that the first test was shown for the Thousand Federal Empire, which was given a fortune so that their strength rose, but they failed because they became arrogant and pressured the Mountain Sect to look for a treasure. Then the second test was for the Mountain Sect themselves when pressured by the Thousand Federal Empire, and here they passed Senior Chen's test because they could withstand the pressure, so Senior Chen gave the Black Serpent to Mountain Sect as a gift. Last one was for his Tianzu Tower, when Long Outyin was shown the Mountain Sect situation in contempt by Thousand Vetter. Then what Long Outyin did was his test as the leader of Tianzu Tower, similar to what he had guessed in the previous part, where he thought that the decision taken yesterday was the right decision and had met Senior Chen's expectations. These are all still Long Outyin assumptions, not what actually happened. After that, Long ordered his subordinates to find a gift that was luxurious enough to give someone, but it was not clear who this Long Outyin was referring to. Then, on the other hand, after Murong and Black Serpent grandfather left looking for students in just half a day, Champingen then got pop notification from the system that the mission to get 10,000 students has been successfully fulfilled. With the completion of the mission, Chen then gets a gift of a super fertilizer, which he says is similar to modern fertilizer when he lived on Earth, and the probability of its efficacy is very high. So Suling is then invited to buy seeds watermelon at the market, then planted the watermelon by sprinkling fertilizer from the system earlier. Apparently with just a little fertilizer used, the watermelon had grown in a matter of minutes, even though it was still small, but at least it had grown to the point that Chen thought the fertilizer was the best reward he had ever gotten from the system, unlike other gifts, he said, because indeed Chen knew that the items in his house were powerful artifacts, so unconsciously his words offended all the artifacts there. Then Suling, who was impatient, then sprinkled half the fertilizer. This managed to grow the watermelon to big fruit in just a matter of minutes. Chen, who then came, realized that enough fertilizer had run out and then scolded Suling. Apparently here was a girl peeking from outside the house, but Chen didn't realize the child and then cut the watermelon to Suling. But before he could check whether the watermelon was safe for consumption because it grew too fast, Suling apparently had eaten a lot of watermelon pieces because he was afraid Chen would give the watermelon to the girls who were outside, and it was here that Chen finally found out that there was a child outside his house. So he went to check on the child, and apparently this child was also a cultivator, so she could also see the huge aura exuded by Chen that gave her goosebumps, and couldn't say anything in front of Champingen. Chen, whose position here already knew that he was giving off a big aura, thought maybe this child wouldn't talk because she was afraid of his aura, so Chen only gave her a piece of watermelon that he had brought and told her to just go home. He was afraid her parents would find later, Chen said. This kid, besides being scared because of the aura that was being emitted by Champingen, apparently she could also feel that there were a lot of very powerful artifacts in the house that made she then run in fear, until finally she took shelter under a tree and ate the watermelon from Champingen earlier, and as a result this child was shocked again when her cultivation suddenly rose to the divinity level. So this kid finally realizes that perhaps the rise of several sects in the area might have something to do with that senior, so she cringes even more that Champingen cultivation has reached to be able to give such valuable food for free to strangers he doesn't know, well, even just met this child. After that she was seen contacting someone and then said that maybe the sect was not just any sect, so immediately prepare a good gift, very big, she said. What kind of Shiedo? Who is this child? We'll find out as the story goes on. Then back to Champingen, finally started to be suspicious of Suling. How could she notice that there was someone in front of his house, if she was not a cultivator? He finally asked whether this Suling had any cultivation base. Chen's question made Suling very nervous because she was finally found out too, even though all this time she had been pretending to be an ordinary human on the orders of the peach tree. So apart from erasing her memory, the peach tree also ordered Suling to pretend to be an ordinary human and live life like a child her age who was not a cultivator, so that Chen would not become more suspicious later. Suling replied that she did have a cultivation base, which ultimately made Chen quite surprised and curious at what level of cultivation the Suling was at, with the help of the peach tree giving a signal behind Chen. Suling said that she had started cultivating not long ago, and had still reached the level Q daggering, or the most level down, but here Chen became suspicious that this Suling was lying, because when Suling answered Chen's questions she always glanced back like someone had told her. But when Chen looked back there was no one. Finally, Chen then took the watermelon they harvested earlier and then threatened Suling that if she didn't tell the truth, he wouldn't give all the watermelons to Suling. Suling, who was afraid that the ration of watermelon would disappear, couldn't help telling the truth to Champingen that all this was ordered by the peach tree. This made Chen even more confused by what Suling said, but Chen suddenly remembered the cultivation book he had read, that an object that had lived for a very long time could have gained their own consciousness to the point that they could turn into humans and even be able to speak too if the level was high enough. So starting here, Chen started to suspect that maybe the peach tree was the same as the fertilizer earlier, which had unusual powers, because peach tree seeds used to be also cane. From the system, was it possible that all items obtained from system rewards had unusual powers? But the system, that was afraid that everything would fall apart, then scolded the peach tree and told her to take responsibility for all the mistakes she had caused, so that the peach tree she issued a moment to Suling, which made the Suling's head dizzy, then said that the cloud, that someone in the sky could talk to her. Chen, who realized that the Suling was getting more and more unclear, then checked her head. Apparently had a very hot temperature, so Chen then ignored everything she said about the peach tree earlier and concluded that maybe all of Suling's words were just hallucinations because he was experiencing high fever. Then moved to Long Out Yin, who was focusing on cultivating, then suddenly he was attacked by a cultivator named by Gufeng until it was destroyed the place Long Out Yin used to cultivate, but fortunately thanks to Long cultivation level, which had reached mortal level, so he could easily escape without he was completely hurt, and he was not angry with this by Gufeng, because apparently the two of them had known each other for a long time and that was probably how they greeted each other. Here Long also replied to Gufeng by saying that he didn't want to make a fuss with cultivators who were at the Mahayana level, so his level was below him. So in short, this Long insulted Gufeng because he couldn't rise to the mortal level, or he was only at Mahayana. Gufeng also at first I was surprised because his attack, which could be considered strong enough, was received by Long Out Yin without being injured at all. So this Gufeng was told by Chen, who has not yet explained who is it that it is possible that this Long Out Yin ascended to Mortal thanks to the help of a senior mortal who is likely a champion, so he is here out of curiosity to finally meet this Long Out Yin. Back again to Chen, who was taking care of Suling, then grandfather Murong came to visit Champingen House, was surprised by the watermelons in the yard because a few days before he was here there weren't any, but only in a few days senior Chen could grow enough watermelons, many, which apparently was also not just any watermelon, but an elixir that could increase one's cultivation. Even the amount of energy was thousands of times greater than any spiritual pills he had ever seen in his life. Seeing Murong grandfather, who was a cultivator, seemed so interested in these watermelons, made Chen thought whether it was possible that the watermelon was an elixir, so that Suling, whose cultivation level was not yet high, had a fever because she had eaten too much of the elixir due to not being able to digest the elixir properly. So basically Chen thought that Suling had excess elixir, or excess energy, from the watermelon because her cultivation was still low. Then Chen asked Murong grandfather about this later, but unfortunately as usual, because he didn't want to interfere with senior Chen's cultivation, Murong replied that watermelon was not an elixir, but just an ordinary watermelon, but Murong then remembered his purpose came here to deliver the news that the Pinyin sect acceptance of 10,000 disciples had already begun, so he offered Chen as the leader would he come to the event. Chen here had to refuse because he was taking care of Suling, who was sick, and instead gave some watermelons to distribute to people. Murong accepted the watermelons, then returned to Pinyin sect, while she thought that senior Chen apparently had a very unique reason for didn't come to the Pinyin sect event, because the reason earlier was that Suling was sick. How could an immortal be sick like that according to Murong? Then the ceremony for accepting new students from the Pinyin sect began, and apparently there were quite a lot of important people who came there, including Linking, who was a princess. Then Murong grandfather was also approached by quite a lot of people from all kinds of kingdoms, so one could conclude that the Pinyin sect was already regarded by people as a large and influential cultivation sect. But it was a different case for some cultivators from a sect called the Purgatory sect who came. there as well, which the young master of this sect told his subordinates that the Pinyin sect was just a trick and incited the students there to enter the sect. The goal was to make money, so no matter how big the Pinyin sect was, he said it was impossible to fight against his purgatory sect, said this young master. He also said fortunately that dragons or black serpents in the sky only cultivate at the Mahayana level, so he can fight it so that in short the young master's cultivation can be said to be stronger than the black serpent, or it could also mean that even though his cultivation is below the black serpent, but he has troops strong enough to fight the black serpent. Then he gives orders to his subordinates to immediately cause Murongsu to be used as core weapons, but here the young master was then surprised by the appearance of the leaders of the three largest organizations who came to the event. He was very surprised why these big leaders could present at this very low quality event. The first is Zenteng as the leaders of Susan Immortal Academy, then the second is by Gufeng, who was introduced as the leader of Treasure Hall, a large business organization that sells various kinds of goods or artifacts, and the little boy, who apparently is by Gufeng's grandson named Chun. Then there is also Long Outyin, who is the leader of the Tianzu Tower, also appears here. These three people succeeded in making the young master purgatory sect so shocked. What kind of sect is this to be able to invite these three people? Long Outyin is also here, finally knowing why Gufeng suddenly appeared in this area. Apparently, he was planning to attend the Pinyin sect event, and he had been getting information from Chun, who saw with his own eyes that there was indeed a very strong senior in this sect. So without much thought, Gufeng decided to make good relations with Senior Chen Pinyin sect, but these grandparents seduced Murong, because indirectly they would also seduce Senior Chen as their leader by giving quite luxurious gifts to each of these three people. After introducing themselves, Grandpa Zen gave a gift of a painting called Dragon in Phoenix Chinxiang, which was guessed that if someone saw the painting it would increase that person's cultivation, so it was very suitable for a cultivation sect, and the painting was also a treasure belonging to Susan Academy. Then Bai Gufeng gave something called high-quality spiritual meridians, which is useful for increasing spiritual level in Pinyin sect. But after that, Long also gave the same thing, but much higher spiritual level, so that made Gufeng feel rival. Then gave a gold card that could be used to get a 10% discount on all items purchased in his treasure hole, which said CAC Zen discount 10. That percent is like giving away half of the treasure hall wealth itself, so it's like saying that the cardholder will become a VIP member of the treasure hole by Gufeng, because they feel competitive here. Long and Gufeng finally compete with each other. Then return to the young master of purgatory sect. Just now seeing these three important individuals, he was immediately shocked and ordered his subordinates to cancel their plan to capture Murongsu. Su, who had been stared at by these people earlier, apparently had suspected something was wrong, and then told his grandfather that these people seemed to want to riot at the event. Long and his friends who heard the report from Su immediately threatened the young master for daring to mess with his brother's sect. But apparently Murong forgave this young master after he said that all this was just a misunderstanding. But then Murong asked whether this young master brought gifts for Pinyin sect or not. As a result, because he was afraid of the three people, this young master took out all the things he had, which made him feel even more emotional and vengeful towards this Pinyin sect. Then not long after, the black serpent who was guarding in the sky fell down and turned into his black dog form again. Then he reported that there was a cultivator in the sky who attacked him, and this person was so strong that the black serpent couldn't fight against it. Apparently above there was an immortal who descended from the immortal world named Yin Ming, and he was said to be traveling in the mortal world, then happened to see a black serpent or the dog that was guarding Pinyin sect attracted him, and he then threatened all the cultivators were there to hand over the black serpent or else the sect be destroyed. Fortunately here Murong was still very loyal and dared to speak out that he would not give up the dog even under threats, because the dog was still Senior Chen pet and he was only borrowing it. Yin Ming, who almost wanted to go berserk hearing Murong answer, suddenly behind him appeared a sword, which then threatened Yin Ming, don't dare mess with the sect, because this sect is a place that the sword protects. Yin Ming apparently also knows the sword, or is called by him Golden Plum, which then made him panicked and astonished. How could a sword exist in the mortal world, let alone protect a sect belonging to a cultivator in the mortal world who they usually thought was very weak? Because This sword was a figure that was considered strong enough in the immortal world. Why would such a strong figure protect a sect belonging to a weak cultivator? Having personally experienced the power of the sword, who seemed to be playing much stronger than him, Yin Ming then ran away, but the sword apparently didn't let him go easily. Then beat him, then told to return to the sect to apologize to Grandpa Morong, and not only that, all the stuff that taken by Yin Ming also seized by the sword then given to Morong. After losing all of his belongings, Yin Ming to go, and was told to tell the others that the sect was already protected by the sword, so in short, he warned the other immortals, so don't you dare mess around with Ping Yin's sect. Then after all the commotion, the event resumed. After 3 days later, after Ping Yin's sect had officially accepted 10,000 students, apparently this mission was the 900th mission of the system, so here it says Chen's system can be upgraded to a higher version, and you can see that the box has changed to a gold color from what was originally blue. Besides the color that has changed here, the system contents have also changed, so the mission that Champingen will get will be more difficult than usual. But the rewards are also not artifacts, but the cultivation of Champiangan increases, so every time Chen successfully completes a mission, his cultivation will also increase by 1 level. After increasing 100 levels of the system, word Chen will become an invincible person in the universe. And as a start, the system also gives Champingen cultivation at the same level, the lowest, so here Chen's cultivation is finally open and can already see and feel Qi. He can also use Cultivator's moves, which are still very weak, because he is still at the beginning, but because previously Chan was not a cultivator, so here, he is very happy with what he finally got it. After a long wait, he could also become a cultivator. He then tested this power by ordering Suling to attack him, who happened to be here. Suling was also very annoyed with Chen because of yesterday's watermelon problem, so here she exerted quite a lot of energy to attack Chen until the effect is translucent to the page behind his house. But apparently unexpectedly Chen was fine and could withstand the attack, even though Suling said it wasn't because of Champingen's power, but rather because of the clothes he was wearing, which might be the clothes which were artifacts obtained from his system. Chen was then quite proud of his cultivation increase, which was considered to be like a strong cultivator, even though he was still very weak, and this made the artifacts who saw it quite awkward, because these people actually know what Chen's true strength is like. Then what is Senior Chan's true strength like? According to the words of the peach tree, Champiangan has been reincarnated several times, but has not explained why or what purpose. One thing is certain, that all of these are Champingan's own decisions, so they have no other choice but to follow the decisions of their master, and said the kitchen knife when Chen overpowered used to against a group of powerful cultivators, where each one of them could destroy the world in one move. Chen could defeat quite a number of cultivators possessing that kind of strength at once in just a matter of seconds, so one could imagine how strong this Chen was before, so they were still very awkward seeing Chen, who was so weak compared to his former strength. Come here at last, a little review of who Champingan's real identity is, although we haven't explained it yet. What about his previous life in the modern world? Was it just a fake memory from his system, or was Earth really one of his reincarnation places? Because according to the peach tree, Chen was reincarnated several times. Maybe this will be revealed as the story progresses. Then Chen got a new mission from his system to go to the city and carry out a mission there, then along with Murong's grandfather, who came to return the dog he borrowed yesterday. Because Chen himself didn't want to keep the dog from the start, so he told Murong to just bring this dog back to Ping Yin's sect. Murong then said that the dog was very smart, docile, and kind to Senior Chen, and after being confirmed by Chen himself, he finally allowed the dog to stay with him. Then, because he remembered the system saying that Chen's mission from now on would be more difficult, Chen then borrowed some healing pills from Murong to take to town, just in case, because he was still new to the world of cultivation. Murong here started to think it was strange that Senior Chen might be planning something else, because besides borrowing healing pills, that should be cheap stuff for Senior Chen compared to everything at his house, this Senior Chen also had his originally very strong aura become a lower level cultivator's aura, which was quite weak, so Murong concluded that there must be something Senior Chen was planning, but Murong didn't dare to ask. Then handed over a dimensional ring, which contained many healing pills inside. In return for the pills, Chen then gave another watermelon to Murong. Interestingly here, Murong thinks it's really good Senior Chen because the cheap pill was exchanged for a very valuable elixir watermelon because the watermelon is indeed an elixir, but Chen, who thought that the watermelon was an ordinary watermelon, actually thought it was very good. This Murong grandfather wanted to exchange the precious pill for an ordinary watermelon, so both of them misunderstood, and here. Then after Murong left, Chen decided to take the dog he named Blackie and also a sword to accompany his mission to the city, and departed Chen on his new mission. Then saw the system showing itself to Blackie and the sword. Her said that their power had been lowered by the system, so later don't show their true power in front of the champing master. The appearance of this system made the sword was shocked the first time he felt the figure behind this system, and he remembered the words of the artifacts at home, who often talk about the system and call her Mr., or if interpreted it means Chen's wife or Chen's lover, and here the fact is finally revealed. That actually the one controlling the system behind the scenes is Boss Duan, and Boss Duan then said, finally got to the next stage, will take a long time, but finally we will meet again soon. It can be concluded that this Boss Duan is Champing Din Lover, which was probably when Chen was still a strong cultivator, because the current Chen can't remember who Boss Duan really is. This is also supported when Chen was at Boss Duan bookstore. He at that time had a deja vu feeling like he felt he was once very close to Boss Duan, but he couldn't explain this feeling, which is probably Chen past memories that started to reappear. Then what is the next plan from Boss Duan? We'll find out in the next episode.